So a few weeks ago we discussed the battle droids within the Separatist military, and I mentioned that I wasn't going to discuss the vehicles utilized by the CIS. And that's because today we're going to talk about a few of the droid vehicles utilized by the Confederacy of Independent Systems. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. So during the Clone Wars, the Separatists used a wide variety of not just battle droids, but armor. There was a whole bunch of different types of tanks and vehicles utilized during the conflict. So today we're going to take a look at just a few of the vehicles utilized. I'm going to draw a quick line here. I'm not going to be talking about vehicles that are manned by other droids, and instead focus on things that are vehicle-like but are droids in themselves. So you won't see things like the MTT or the ATT here, as those vehicles were piloted by B1 or OOM series battle droids. I also would like to say that I intend to mostly focus on ground vehicles, so I probably won't be covering things like the HMP gunship. So the Separatists utilized a lot of different, very unique units, but let's start with two of them that are relatively similar. The Spider Droids. The larger of the two variants of Spider Droids utilized by the CIS is the OG-9 homing Spider Droid. This massive walker towered over the battlefield, giving its beam laser the ability to fire down on opponents. This allowed it to sort of bypass any cover that they were behind, as well as just basically gave it the advantage of a higher firing position. Like the B1 and B2 battle droids, these were manufactured by Bactoid Armor Workshop, and saw combat basically starting from the Battle of Geonosis all the way up to the very end of the war. We see these during several major battles, including the Battle of Geonosis, and even at Felucia during Order 66. Ultimately, the Spider Droid's imposing height made it a terror on the battlefield. It was horrifying to the clones that faced them. But the OG-9 wasn't the only Spider Droid. There's also the DSD-1 Dwarf Spider Droid. This one is more based as sort of an infantry platform, and it would give Separatist droid units the ability to carry really large anti-vehicle armaments with them. Well, the Dwarf Spider Droid was not that much taller than the standard infantry utilized by the CIS. It was significantly more threatening, having a fairly large main cannon. A cannon that could in some cases be used to even take down heavy vehicles like ATTs. Like the homing Spider Droid, these were used for basically the entire duration of the war. We see them at the Battle of Geonosis, and we see them as late as the Battle of Kashyyyk, immediately before Order 66. Fun fact, both of these Spider Droid variants were designed before the war for debt collection purposes. These terrifying tools of war were used to scare anyone who owed money to the Commerce Guild into paying back their debts. But another very unique droid vehicle is the NR-N99 Persuader class droid enforcer. Most of you will probably know it as the Snail Tank. We see these utilized, once again, basically throughout the entire history of the war, although these don't seem to have actually been present at the Battle of Geonosis. These vehicles were originally designed, manufactured, and utilized by the Techno Union. Before the war, they were, like the Spider Droids, used by the Techno Union to force people who owed them debts to sort of pay them back. But when the war broke out, they obviously found their way onto the battlefields and were a key asset that the Techno Union brought to the CIS. Interestingly, they seem to have the ability to float on water, which would really come in handy when assaulting a beach like we see in Revenge of the Sith. But there's one more droid vehicle that we have to discuss, and that's one that a lot of you will recognize. And that is the IG-227 Hellfire class Droid Tank, although many of you would probably know it as the Hellfire Tank or the Hellfire Droid. These relatively small tanks could roll across the battlefield at remarkable speeds, using their two large wheels to propel them forwards much faster than any repulsor-lift vehicle. And then they could utilize their main armament, a battery of high-explosive missiles, to engage larger Republic vehicles, things like ATTEs, which one of these missiles can kill in a single shot. On top of that, though, they did have a secondary laser cannon mounted underneath the vehicle that could engage any infantry that get too close. Designed by Horchal Engineering before the war, this vehicle has a very similar backstory to nearly every other vehicle we've talked about. These were utilized by the Intergalactic Banking Clan for, guess what? Debt collection. But when war broke out, obviously, like every other vehicle on this list, they found their way onto the battlefield. They became an important asset for fast attack missions against Republic armored columns. That being said, the role they filled in combat was fairly specific. Basically really being useful against Republic armored columns and not much else. Against infantry, its individual laser cannon was sort of ineffective at high speeds, and because the wheels themselves are relatively narrow, it couldn't even be used as sort of a blunt weapon against Republic infantry units. To engage Republic infantry, the most effective tool was still the standard battle droids, the B1s, B2s, and sometimes OOMs that we see utilized by the CIS. If you want to learn more about those units and other infantry units used by the Confederacy during the war, I'll leave a link up here to my video on that. And I want you to let me know down in the comments what you think about all of these vehicles having been used for debt collection before the war. Do you think it's a little silly, or do you think it actually kind of makes sense with the character of these companies? And if you have anything else you want me to cover from Star Wars, of course, as always, leave it down below in the comments. And last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.